Somebody recently asked me about hope. They had sent me, one of my coaching clients had sent a message and said, is it bad to hope? And I told him, listen, hope isn't a bad thing, but we've taken hope from its original meaning and we've downsized it greatly. So now hope is nothing more than wishful thinking. So if that's the hope that you're hoping in, then you're dealing with a hope that's almost powerless. And what I want to do is talk about hope as the superpower. Often in communities and in groups, people say you shouldn't hope. Now, understand this. If you're operating from a place of depression, a place of despair, and the highest level that you can get to is a place of hope, then you should definitely hope. Like I said, you're coming from a place of hopelessness, for example, despair. Then, if hope is the alternative that you have, then you should utilize that hope to the fullest advantage. But we're going to talk about hope from a biblical perspective. We're going to be coming from 1 Corinthians 13:13. Now these three remain. Now, when we're talking about these three remaining, you have to go to the earlier verses in the chapter of 1 Corinthians 13, and it talks about the love. This is what they call the love chapter. So it gives you all these things, all these attributes of love. And it says, after it goes through all these list of attributes, it says, now these three remain: faith, hope, love. But the greatest of these is love. And again, we're coming from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13. What you see is that love is the greatest of these, but a close second is that of faith and hope. Nobody discounts faith. It's hope that we have a problem today. But I want to talk about hope from a biblical perspective as a superpower. We're told, now of these three, that faith, love, and hope, love is the greatest of these. When we're talking about love, love is speaking of that agape love, that God type love. This is the essence of who God is. We're told in scripture that God is love. When we're operating out of our truest self, we're operating from a place of love. Love is who you are. Love is who you've been created to be. When we talk about missing the mark, anytime we're operating from a place of less than love, then we're missing the mark of who we truly are. But love is not the focus today. Today's focus is going to be that of hope. So let's talk about it. It says that now the greatest of these is love. A close second is faith and hope. So we're going to talk about both of these, faith and hope, and we want to give you a context in which to build your hope upon. A lot of times today, in today's vernacular, when we're talking about hope, let me share with you a story. Years ago, when my nephew had just received his master's degree, in a conversation that we had, I said, okay, well, the next step is you actually pursuing and getting your doctoral degree or your doctorates. And he said, I hope so. And I said, don't hope so, know so. Now, why did I make the distinction? And often when I'm talking to people, they will often say the phrase, I hope so. This particular hope is a passivity, a hope that I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping that this is going to happen. And this is why a lot of people discount the word hope. But in hope's original meaning in Scripture, this was not what was being conveyed by Scripture. Today's hope so is almost anemic. It's powerless. It's weak. It's begging for a handout and hoping that God will come through or someone else will come through. But this is not the hope of Scripture. Today's hope so amounts to nothing more than wishful thinking, if I'm lucky. Again, like I said, this was not what was being conveyed by Scripture, by the writers of Scripture. Even when you're looking from Genesis to Revelation and you're talking about the word hope, hope was founded upon something. Love was founded upon something. Faith was founded upon something. And that something was God. Many of us, we will turn off our switch now because we hear the word God. God is the life force, the energy, the sustainer, the creator of all things. We're not talking about this being out in the sky somewhere that we're hoping will bring about deliverance. God is that essence within you, that power that causes you to live, move, and have your existence. Whatever you call that life force, we're going to call it God today, but we're calling it energy, we're calling it life, we're calling it spirit. In the past, when the word hope was utilized, it was linked to the source of all things known as God. We call that God today, Elohim, I am, the self existing one. When we talked about hope in the past, we knew that this hope was based off of God says, the good that one desires. I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you a hope and a future. When we're talking about hope based off of scripture, we're talking about a hope that's linked to the source of all things. So hope was not based off of a meager concept. It was based off of the source of all things. Now, let me give you some definitions of hope from the Strong's Concordance. When we're talking about hope, hope based off of the Strong's Concordance was based off of an expectancy, an anticipation, a confidence. Some would even say an assumption. All of us understand the word assumption today. Even as we talk about the word faith, when we talk about faith, faith was based off of a belief or conviction of truth. In the book of Hebrews, we're told faith was the substance of things hoped for. Again, we go back to the word hope for, in the evidence of the things not seen. We hoped, we had our expectation, we had our anticipation, we had our confidence. We assumed a thing to be true before it was manifested. Hope in a biblical, scriptural context was assurance, was an expectancy. We often say that you don't get what you want, you get what you expect. That expectations that we talked about in that phrase was that word that we call hope. As we see, hope in its original context was powerful. Hope was almost as it were a superpower. So we go back and we say, now listen, of these three that remain, and again, when you're going to the book of 1 Corinthians 13, there was a whole list of things that love was. The writer says, listen, of all the things that we talked about, of the three that remain, faith, love, and hope, the greatest of these is love. Not to discount the other two. And like I said, many people have discounted the word hope. We still talk about faith. We continue to link faith with belief as it should be. We link faith to a divine presence as we should. We should also link our hope to a divine knowing, an expectancy, an anticipation, a confidence, an assuming. Once you understand that hope is linked to the divine source or the all knowing, then your hope again becomes powerful. If you're basing hope, as it were, off of a wishful thinking, a hope so, maybe it'll work out type of hope, then that hope is powerless. And I understand when those in different communities say, don't link yourself to that type of hope. But let me go back to what I said earlier. If you're operating from a place of despair and the only thing you have is a meagerly hope, that's a spark. Don't discount it. That's a spark. Don't discount it if that's all you have. If you're only linking your hope to a wishful thinking, but it's taking you and moving you from despair, then that's a start. If you're only linking your hope to, if I'm lucky, but it's moving you from depression, then that's a start. But understand this, hope is so much more than what we've linked it to, because you have to look at the object of your hope. And when you look at it from the object of your hope, we say that God, Elohim, the all sufficient one, the I am, when you're linking your hope to that, when you're linking your hope to the eternal being known as God, then your hope becomes infused with power. Like I said, if the hope is just solely based off of a wishful thinking, a hope so, a if everything works out, and if the stars align in my favor, then again, like I said, that hope in itself is powerless. But when you understand that your hope is linked to the divine source known as God, and you begin walking in that hope, it's an expectancy, it's a anticipation, it's a inner knowing. Matter of fact, hope and faith are so closely linked. Often we exchange the meanings or the terms of hope and faith. Faith is more so a belief, a conviction that's based off of evidence that has not been manifested in the material realm. But hope is that nail in the foundation of faith. When you're operating from faith or believing, you have an expectation known as hope, an assumption, if you will. Hope can be said like this, that hope is the closure of faith. You have a belief in something, and then you begin living from the expectancy or the hope in that thing that you say that you believe. Again, bring hope back to its original meaning, an expectation, an anticipation that allows one to persevere in the things that they're hoping for. But creators, ultimately remember this: no matter what you call it, hope, expectancy, confidence, assumption, ultimately it depends on you and your thinking, your belief, your faith, your love for the thing that you're trying to manifest. And remember this, that only you can create your perfect world, not God or man. Only you can create your perfect world. This is Coach DeCarlo saying have a great and abundant day.